All right, guys, so hopefully you can hear me. This is just going to be some live homework help. All right, for the Pythagorean theorem homework that I gave you guys. So let's start off with number 7. So as you can see in number 7, you have a right triangle. This box right here illustrates that. All right, so if you have this box right here, then we have a right triangle because we have a right angle. Okay, so if a triangle has a right angle, but it has this box, then it's a right triangle. And in this case, they want us to find the missing length. So in every one of these triangles, that's going to be this side in this case. In this case, it'll be this triangle. And then it'll be this side in this case. And then this hypotenuse here in this case. And then here in this case, and here in this case. So hopefully that should look a little bit better. All right. So it says find each missing length to the nearest tenth. Right, so let's start off with number 7. So as you can see in number 7, we have this triangle, and we have this right angle here. Now remember what I said, and I think it was the very first video for Pythagorean theorem. It had to do with how to recognize which side is the hypotenuse. So when you want to find out which side is the hypotenuse is, you just go to the right angle and you look at the side that's opposite to it. So you kind of like draw a line, like you can kind of think of it as a line going away from the right angle, opposite. So this is the hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse we're always going to label as C. Okay, so some of you guys were getting confused today in class. When we write this equation, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, this part right here is very strict. Okay, this part not so much. The a squared and the b squared, a and b, those are just the legs, right? There's 2 legs, so it's not that big of a deal to plug in one for a and one for b. But for c, the hypotenuse is very important to plug in to choose the correct side. Okay, to choose the correct side for the c. So for example, in this case, we know that the sides, in this case, this side and this side, the ones that are right next to the right angle are the legs. Meaning, in this case, we're going to have a equals 4, and we're going to have b equals 8. Right? We also could have said let b equal 4 and let a equal 8. All right. But what we could not have said, if we're going to use this form of the equation, which I saw some of you guys do, is you can't say you can't say c equals 8 and do something weird. All right. So you really want to recognize the fact that this line going away from the right angle, that has to be the c. Okay, that has to be the hypotenuse for this equation. Okay, the hypotenuse being this part. Okay, the c squared, the c. So in other words, another way to write this equation, how I wrote it in class, is like this. Instead of a squared plus b squared equals c squared, you can think of it as one of the legs squared plus another leg of the triangle squared is equal to the hypotenuse. Squared. All right. So that's all that's going on in this case. So let's plug in for this. So in this case, we're going to have a squared, but a is 4. So we're going to plug in 4. So instead of a squared, a is 4, we're going to have 4 squared plus b is 8. So instead of b squared, b is 8. So we're going to have 8 squared equals c squared. All right. So now what we can do is 4 squared is 4 times 4. Some of you guys are still making the 4 times 2 mistake. This is not 4 times 2, guys. Think back to the exponent stuff we did. This is 4 squared. Thing squared is thing times thing. So 4 squared is 4 times 4 is 16. Plus 8 times 8, which is 8 squared, is 64. Equals c squared, right? And then when you do this, you'll get, you can rearrange this a little bit. You can add 16 and 64, and then you'll have that's equal to c squared, or Otherwise, you'll have c squared equals 80. Okay, that's I just flipped it around. You can do that because of equality. So you get 16 plus 64, which is 80. All right, so now what we can do here is you can take the square root of both sides. And here's another mistake I saw you guys make. A lot of you guys like to, when you take the square root, the reason we take the square root is to get rid of the squared. Right, so we take the square root to get rid of the squared on the c. Now, some of you guys, when you're done with your problem, the answer is going to be c equals the square root of 80. But some of you guys are doing like a square root on both sides, and when you do that, because this square root went away, some of you guys like to say that means c equals 80. So I don't really know what's going on with the other square root. The other square root has to stay here. This square root is very important. All right, so now what we'll do is we'll get the calculator out, and we'll do square root of 80, which is 4 times the square root of 5, or in decimal, it'll be 8.9, which is equal to 8.9. All right, let's go to number 8. So number 8's the same thing. You want to see which side are you missing, because the directions say find each missing length to the nearest tenth. So we need to find each missing length. So to do that, we need to find out which letter out of the a squared plus b squared equals c squared is missing. So in this case, if you look at the right angle you have and you draw a line, then you'll have c here. Okay, you'll see that it's the hypotenuse, right? The hypotenuse is the one that's exactly opposite from the right angle. And when you do that, you'll get a to be equal to 6 and b to be equal to 3, and then c is the one that we don't know, right? And we also could have let b equal 6 and a equals 3. Okay, these are the a and b's. You can change those around because those are just letters. What's more important is the hypotenuse, right? You need to have the unknown and the a squared plus b squared equals c squared formula. You need to have it in the right spot. So now we can plug it in the formula. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We don't know c, so c is going to stay c squared, and we'll get a squared, which is going to be 6 squared, plus b is 3, so we'll have 3 squared. All right, and then we'll have 6 squared is 36. 6 squared is 6 times 6, which is 36, plus 3 squared, which is 3 times 3, which is 9, equals to c squared. 36 plus 9 is 45, which is equal to c squared. And then, because of equality, we can then write, we can rearrange it, and we'll get c squared equals 45. Take the square root of both sides. This square root and this square cancel. This square root stays there. So you'll get c equals the square root of 45. And if you put that in the calculator, square root of 45 decimals 6.7. Right? So you get that. All right, so let's go look at number 9. Number 9 says 7. We look at the sides, right? So we have the right angle here, so we want to go opposite to see which one we're missing. All right. So if you look at all these problems, and all of these problems on this first 7 through 12, you're missing the hypotenuse, right? So if you look here, you're missing the side that's opposite the right angle. The side that's opposite this one is the hypotenuse, so you're missing c. What side are you missing here? You're missing the side that's opposite the right angle, which is c. Same thing here, you're missing the side opposite the hypotenuse, which is c. And same thing here, you're missing the side that's opposite the hypotenuse, which is c. All right, so I'm going to do a couple more of these, and I'll leave you a couple, and then look at some other ones on the back. So in this case, we're going to have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. C is the one we don't know, so it'll look like this, equals c squared. And then a squared, it doesn't matter which one you let a and b be, okay? You're going to get the same thing mathematically. So we'll just say a is 7, and we'll say b is 10. And then when you do that, a squared, so instead of a squared, we're going to have 7 squared, because a is 7. So we'll have 7 squared plus b is 10. So instead of plus b squared, we'll have plus 10 squared, So we'll get 49 plus 7 squared is 49, 7 times 7. 10 squared is 10 times 10, which is 100, equals c squared. And then we'll get c squared equals 100 plus 49 is 149. Take the square root of both sides. Square root and the square cancel. This square root stays. And you get c equals the square root of 149. And you can plug that into the calculator. And you'll get square root of 149, which is 12.2. 12.2. So that means this side right here, this side is 12.2. C equals 12.2. And that makes sense because the hypotenuse is the longest side. This side was 7. This side was 10. Those are the legs. The hypotenuse is the longest side. And we get C equals 12.2, which is 12.2 is larger than 10. And 12.2 is larger than 7. All right, so I'm going to do one more of these. And then I want to do some other ones on the next page, a little more interesting. So same thing here, we're missing the c. We don't know what c is. So when we write out a squared plus b squared equals c squared, we don't know what the c is. So we're still going to have c squared. But we do know what the legs are, right? We know one of the legs is 3 and one of the legs is 7. So we'll say, in this case, we'll say a is 3, b equals 7. It doesn't matter which one you do. You could have said let b be 3 and let a be 7. You'll still end up with 3 squared plus 7 squared. Right? If you would have switched it, you would have had 7 squared plus 3 squared, but that's the same thing because addition is commutative. You can move it around. So 9 plus 3 is 12, and 3 plus 9 is 12. All right, so addition is commutative. So we'll plug in for a squared here. So a squared, but a is 3, so we'll have 3 squared plus b is 7. So instead of b squared, we'll have 7 squared. And then we'll have 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. Plus 7 squared is 7 times 7, which is 49, equals to c squared. And then we'll get c squared is equal to, well, 9 plus 49 is 58. Take the square root, both sides. Square cancels, and you get c equals the square root of 58. And don't forget, we were supposed to have plus or minus here, but we're talking about length. So mathematically, we have 2 solutions, one for the plus, one for the minus. But practically, we only have one solution, the positive, because we're talking about length in this case. So we just care about the positive square root of 58. All right, so hopefully that clears some stuff up. You guys should be able to handle these last two. All right, it's the same exact thing I just went through up here. So now I want to talk, 13's also the same as the ones previously. 14's also the same as the ones before. 15 is one of the ones that I'm interested in right now. So real quick, let's write down a squared plus b squared equals c squared. All right, so we're looking at 15. A squared plus b squared is c squared. So what I'm going to do here is we need to find out which ones we have in this triangle and which ones we don't have. So first things first, let's go to this number 15 triangle. Look at your right angle that you have here and then go across. Remember, that's always the C, that's the hypotenuse. And in this case, we know the hypotenuse, it's 7.4. That means we can plug in 7.4 for our equation. So we're going to have equals to 7.4 squared. A lot of you guys were plugging in 7.4 for A or B. You can't do that. All right, you really do have to recognize where the hypotenuse is. Otherwise, you'll just get the wrong answer. Okay. For example, some of you guys were getting a bigger number on this side than you did the hypotenuse. That can't happen. The hypotenuse is the longest side for a in the triangles that we're looking at. All right, the hypotenuse is going to be the longest side. All right, so now what we can do is we need to find out what A is, or we can find out what B is. So what I'm saying is we need to label this leg, right? Because we know the hypotenuse is C. Okay, that's this right here. That's 7.4. What we don't know is this leg right here. Let's just call that leg A. We could have called it B, but I'm gonna call it A. Why not? Okay, you can switch it around. So because I don't know this length here, which is A, we have to leave A squared inside the equation we're gonna solve. Then we'll have plus B squared. B is the other leg. That's this leg. We know this leg. This leg is 3.6, so we'll do 3.6 squared. All right, so when we're doing this, we'll get A squared plus 3.6 squared. That's 3.6 times 3.6. 3.6 times 3.6. 12.96. And then that's going to be equal to 7.4 squared. 7.4 times 7.4. That's 54.76. All right. Now here comes a little bit of algebra. We want to find out what A is. Okay, remember that's our primary goal. We want to know A. We know B and we know C, but we want to find A. But here we have A squared. So what we can do is, I think what a good idea is to get this A squared by itself, and then we'll do something else. All right, so but now what we'll do is I'll subtract. Instead of doing that, I'm going to do some algebra. So because I want to get A squared by itself, I'm going to subtract this number right here from both sides of the equation, like this. Minus 12.96 minus 12.96. And when you do that, 12.96 minus 12.96 is 0. They cancel out. And you're left with A squared equals 54.76 minus 12.96 is 41.8. So we end up with this equation right here. All right, but there's a problem. We want A. We have A squared. How do you get rid of the squared? Square root. All right, square root, good to know. So now the squared goes away, square root goes away. This square root stays, right? But maybe you don't want your answer to have a square root. So what you need to do is you need to go to the calculator and you need to plug in the square root of 41.8 to see what it's equal to. And it's equal to 6.5 if you round it to the nearest tenth. Remember, if you want to round to the nearest tenth, that means the nearest digit after the decimal, you have to look at the second decimal. So in this case, the second decimal is 6. That means you have to go up, which makes this number go up by 1, this first number after the decimal. So instead of 6.46, you want to round to the nearest tenth, you're going to have 6.5. All right, so you get A equals 6.5. And that makes sense. All right, so let's look at one more. Let's do this 21. All right, so let's do 21. And 21 says we have this. Let's look at this. Okay, so 21. So first things first in all of these, I've always looked at, so far I've looked at this right angle here. All right, I looked at the right angle and I see, and you have to look at the side that's opposite, okay? Because the side that's opposite is the hypotenuse. The side opposite from the right angle is the hypotenuse. So we're gonna have this as our hypotenuse, all right? This purple side is the hypotenuse, okay? And that's equal to 7.2. So we know C equals 7.2. So we look at our equation, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. All right, we know C is 7.2. So maybe we'll plug that in real quick. So 7.2 squared. And then what we don't know is this last leg right here. But we know this leg here. So maybe in this one, I called the missing leg A, the one we didn't know A. Now in this one, I'm gonna call this missing length B. All right, just to show you guys that you can mix it up if you want. These, the legs. All right, so I'll say this is B. So I'll say we know A, in this case, is 5.3. So A equals 5.3. So we're going to have 5.3 squared plus b squared. All right, so you go to the calculator and you type in 5.3 squared and you get 28.09 plus b squared equals, so we just did 5.3 squared, which is 5.3 times 5.3, you get 28.09. Then you get 7.2 squared, 51.84. All right, so one step closer. So now we need to subtract 28.09 from both sides because we want to find b. B is the missing length. Here's b squared. So you want to get b squared by itself. So subtract 28.09 from both sides. You get b squared equals 51.84 minus 28.09. You get 23.75. Now we have b squared by itself, but we just want b. So you take the square root of both sides. Square goes away, square root goes away. B is going to equal the square root of 23.75. So we put that in, square root of 23.75. You get 4.9 because you have the round. So it's 4.87, but you got to bring it up one because of the 7. So you go to 4.9. So b equals 4.9. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. You guys should be able to handle the rest of these on your own. All right. Thanks for watching, guys.